So, Andrew, recently there has been a large debate raging online on Twitter. It's been something that's been actually prolonged over a few years, where you have a massive point of difference between the red pill and the Christian conservatives, the red pill and the Christian nationalists, the red pill and the tradcons and all these sorts of things. Because a fundamental pillar of the red pill ideology is to look at the world in this pragmatic way and to say that the game is rigged against men, marriage is a scam, don't get married, smart men don't get married, only stupid men get married. And then the Christian conservatives, obviously a fundamental pillar of their worldview is that marriage is the backbone of society, nuclear family is the backbone of society, and it's the way in which one gets the most purpose from their life. So what I want to do is I want to analyze Tate's monologue and then Matt Walsh's monologue, and we can critique their arguments as they go, because I do feel like they're talking past each other a lot.
Can we start with something else, though, which is that I have noticed that the RP content creators who push the polygyny line also happen to be Muslims or come from Muslim backgrounds. I just want to put that in, that these concepts are not the idea that they're not religiously tied, I think, is a farce. I think that they are all religiously tied in. They're just presenting them as though they're not.
It's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, when I look at Andrew Tate, he often kind of says this, that he looks at the world as sort of a chessboard and he looks at the game in front of him. I think that the reason why he became Muslim was because he looked at the demographics of the world and said that, well, in 50 years' time, I think that Islam is going to be the major religion in the world.
Then maybe he can't read stats very well.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's accurate, but
yeah.
I think
he converted to Christian.
No. He's a Muslim. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, his brother is an Orthodox Christian. I've talked with him multiple times. Tristan, I've talked with him. He's an Orthodox Christian. Tate himself is, whether he's a practicing Muslim, I don't know, but there was a conversion to Islam as far as I know.
Yeah.
I choose me. I'm a feminist now. I choose me. I don't want to get married so that a woman can threaten to take half my stuff every time she's unhappy. She's the only girl I'm allowed to sleep with or see. My genetic progeny is limited by her capability because she grows babies too slow. No, I don't want to get married. And when I say that, people go, well, how are you going to have kids? I got him. I got him. These beta males have no idea how it is at the top. Because the beta male mating strategy is, if I spend enough time with a woman and I dedicate my life to her and I let her tell me what to do, she'll give me a child. But when you're me, you just meet them and say, baby. Okay.
Now, that is funny.
Holy shit, dude.
And he has got like a point here about, like, if you look throughout history, a lot of the very high status men, the men with money and riches and these sorts of things, they would employ this mating strategy throughout history. That does have historical context, no?
No. So here's the truth. The truth is that kings would often form alliances with other nations by marrying one woman. They couldn't be married to multiple women. It was not allowed. The most powerful men in the world practiced monogamy, not polygyny. These are Asian customs, right? These are Eastern customs, which come from their warlords and their kind of peasant class. But no. It's actually the case that monogamy has deep-rooted seeds historically, every bit as much as polygyny or polygamy does. So that's false one. Two, the problem with his argument here is, okay, great. So for a very small percentage of men, a very tiny percentage of men, they can afford to impregnate a ton of women and take care of those children and have the court allocate how much money they're going to be paying in child support, because you cannot make a custodial agreement with a woman about the support of the child that the court will conform to. So in other words, a man can't make a contract with a woman and say, if you have my kid, you're only going to ever receive X amount, and the court enforces that. They won't enforce that. They'll enforce prenuptial agreements when it comes to marriage and what you would get for alimony or for dissolving the marriage. But what they won't do is adhere to any contracts made between a man and a woman when it comes to the children themselves and how much a woman receives. So that's terrible advice right off the gate, right? How is it helpful if the state is basically running the monopoly on your resources when it comes to children, for you to say, okay, well, I just won't marry them and have children, you're in the exact same boat as the men who aren't practicing polygyny, who just knock them up out of wedlock, right? It's the same exact principle applied. So it's a silly argument. That's a silly argument. So first of all, we have class, right? You have to be in a certain class where this is even doable for you. So it's not helpful to most men anywhere. The second is that it doesn't put you in any kind of good situation, because you're going to be dealing with a state in any of the countries where you want their women, at least. And even in the ones where you don't, they can still allocate that you have to pay X amount of support. So let's listen to the rest of it here.
I don't have to give up my life. I don't have to dedicate my finances to her. I don't have to go to her stupid uncle's barbecue.
Yeah, so stop it here.
If a bitch told me to go to her.
Yes, you do. If it is the case that you have a child with a woman, you are granting that the state is going to give up and allocate X amount of your resources to that woman. And the thing that's really interesting here, they want children to have universalized lifestyles, especially in the West. But even in Islamic nations, this is the case. So if it's the case that they want a universalized lifestyle, that means that if you have a rich baby daddy, he has to pay you a lot of money in order to make sure that they have the same standard of living at mommy's house that they do at daddy's house.
I think his strategy is that he takes women from all around, and he says this later, and impregnates them in different countries so that he doesn't have to actually be present in that legal system, and then he pays them X amount per month, and then they have no recourse, essentially. And if he wants to stop paying them, if they annoy him, then he can stop paying them.
Yeah, who's that available to, though?
Like 0.01% of the
yeah.
population.
So how's it helpful? It's not any sort of prescription to society. And by the way, anybody can do it now. Any degenerate anywhere can do this right this second. They can just go to a different country, impregnate a chick, and come back. Right? There's no barrier for entry here. There's no need for reforming of laws. There's no need for anything. You can literally just do this right now, but it's available to essentially nobody. So who cares? It's a non-argument. If you're going to tell the really, really, really infinitesimal amount of men that this option is available to them, first of all, they already know this option is available to them. There's no man who's a multi-millionaire who has access to all of that, who doesn't know they couldn't go to another country and impregnate some chick. Of course they can. They know this. How is this useful for the guy working at a factory? How's this useful for any of the rest of the male? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it is available to men in the sense that you could just go to Cambodia and impregnate a random Cambodian woman, but to have it in an organized, structured way where you give them X amount per month and they come and see you wherever, that's not available to all guys.
It's almost available to no guys.
Yeah.
No, I don't know the family of the women I have kids with. I don't know them. I don't care.
Yeah, but this is the other problem, right? This is what I would often argue with Pearl, which is that it's this very same type of degeneracy promoted is what got us here in the first place. This is a similar window dressing to standardized leftist degeneracy. Do as thou wilt, right? So yeah, Tate can have a polyamorous and polygynous relationship, but you know what? So does Destiny. Destiny can also have those, and has. You know what I mean? How is it that this is in some way helpful to society that guys like Destiny, for instance, are plugging Lauren Southern at the same time they're plugging some other chick at the same time they're banging a bunch of other chicks on the internet and sucking dick in between all of that? How is that helpful to society? How does that help the social fabric? How does that help family units? It does nothing. This advice would only appeal to a very small percentage of men. And even then, how is it helpful? What does it do?
Yeah, I think that he makes that sort of historical argument, I guess, where he says that him and Elon Musk have the right mating strategy because they are helping to repopulate, and white men aren't repopulating because they're only having babies with one woman, and they give the women too much power in society, and then this is why birth rates collapse.
Terrible argument. And here's why that's a terrible argument. Even if it's the case that these guys would, let's say, have 50 children to the average Joe's one, so what? It's a drop in the bucket for the amount of men that such a lifestyle is available to, right? If all of the men in that tier who could afford that lifestyle did it, it would not do anything at all to offset the birth rate crisis. Nothing, as in zero.
Who in their right mind would get married now? It's not.
Well, that's
important.
true.
Everyone says it's important for Western society. Western society is toast, guys.
There we go.
Do you know why it's toast? Because you all got married to women, treated women like your equals. Now they vote in for people to come in who don't get married and don't raise the kids and don't give a f. And now you're all getting stabbed to death. You know that marriage has actually ruined society because you gave women too much.
So this is a contradiction in terms. He says Western society is because a bunch of married people vote in people who are unmarried degenerates. And it's like, well, wait a second. Wouldn't the solution there just be to vote in people who are not unmarried degenerates? And on top of that, there's another key point here that I think he's missing, which is these problems didn't used to exist and everybody was married. Why isn't that ever addressed? That our divorce rate was infinitesimal and almost everybody was married. And this is not long ago. We're talking about less than 70, 80 years ago, where the standard has just now taken a nosedive. So I would say it has to do with the way that court laws have responded to feminism far more than it would be to the fact that, well, men just aren't going out and humping enough women. It's like, no, that doesn't address anything. That addresses no issues.
Yeah, okay.
Power, and you now live in a matriarchy, which is misandric.
I think the argument, though, is that, like, when he says that the West is toast, I think there is a good argument to be made there, because when you look at the birth rate crisis in the West and the demographic crises in the West, countries like the United Kingdom, for example, they're importing pretty much like the entire Arabic world, the entire Muslim world, and the United Kingdom is going to be a Muslim country. So that country is essentially toast. A lot of Western European countries are having a similar sort of problem. So when you look at it, and this is why it brings back to the Andrew Tate becoming Muslim thing, when you look at it and the way that the next 50 years or so is going to go, one might read that play and say, okay, well, these countries are going to eventually become Islamic. So this whole idea of the trad West of 1950s is essentially toast.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but what does mass migration have to do with traditional marriage? That's the question. It's like, you can say that the demographics in the West are plateauing and they're dying off. But here's the thing. The birth rates have been collapsing since the year 1800, right? At a very slow pace. And then they hit a free fall collapse as soon as women started to prioritize education over childbearing for those fertile years. Mass migration for the purposes of uprooting GDP has a lot to do with corporate interest in a second-class slave class that maximizes their profit margins. That's what that's about. What does this have to do with traditional marriage, or the idea that one man, one woman is the best backbone for society, when all of the stats you could ever look at from either side of the aisle, by the way, there's one thing the left and right have to agree on. Even the United Nations agrees that this is the case, that you diversify the genes of your population with a one man, one woman policy. And on top of that, you create the most stable societies for outgrowth and for population when there's enough women available for enough men. That's how you make stable societies. I don't know, I don't even know how that's contested. I've never seen anybody successfully contest that because the stats are so far against you.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of idealistically, it would be the case, but these guys make more of a black pill argument, because when you look at the Muslim world, for example, there is a lot of this stuff that goes on, a lot of like polygyny, guys who have multiple different families, and then you do have massive underclasses of men who emerge in these countries and have absolutely no access to women. And then actually, those underclasses are generally the ones who are mass migrating across to European countries. Those ones who have no access to women in their own countries are coming across to these European countries. So then the argument is that the more these cultures come in, they're a more masculine culture, less feminist. They will eventually sort of kill out the Western culture as we know it, and then it will become like a spawn of what that Arabic world is.
So then wouldn't the argument there contradict itself or go against itself in some way? Maybe not a direct contradiction, but the idea is underclasses of men in polygynous countries become emergent because the higher status class of men are able to group most of the women and resources to themselves. So they move to a place where they can grip more resources, where there's enough women who are available who aren't married so they can get one. Isn't that literally an argument against themselves, Jake?
Yeah, kind of is. Yeah.
Kind of is, right? So the idea here is like, oh, we've created an underclass through polygyny and resource hoarding. And so then these men go to get resources elsewhere, which includes women. And so they go to places where women are available because there's one available for every man. That's the purpose, right? And then the same thing would be applied when it comes to mass migration of women, right? It's not like when these people immigrate in, they don't have children who are female. Let's not kid ourselves. There's lots of white dudes out there waking up to, chilaquiles and breakfast burritos with their hot senorita. And, that seems to have worked out pretty well for them. Right. So the idea here, when you're talking about polygyny, is just remember you're kind of making a case against it, making a case for it.
Yeah, it's true.
No, actually, the Western society is built on marriage. If you white boys could stop simping for 5 seconds being wife jack pussy holes, you might be able to take your societies back. But you're too busy sitting around with some chick, watching Netflix, not having enough kids because she doesn't want any more, unless you get a second house and a third car, wondering why the random Somali down the street has 9 kids out of Fatima, raised on your taxes. We're now living in a world where, as a man, the game is completely rigged against you. All you can do is try and win the game. You can hate me all you want.
Well, hang on, pause it there.
Decision.
I don't hate Tate. I think he makes a lot of good points that need to be contended with, right? I'm just, unlike my opposition, and unlike most people who are, conservative influencers who have a lot of moxie in the space, I actually am willing to engage with these points. They just refuse to. They just actually refuse to engage. And they refuse to give the guy credit when he makes good points. He is making one good point here, which is that marriage is fundamentally broken. He also makes another point that the game is rigged against men. I would also counter this, though, and just ask, when was the game not rigged against men? The game has always been rigged, okay? And it's rigged by men against men, and men rig the game against other men, and they do it on purpose because, we want to be at the top, right? This is a hierarchy. There's a pecking order to it. Men compete with each other constantly and consistently, and they rig the game against other men. Women rig the game against other women too, by the way, and they try to rig it against men. So, in other words, the idea that the game is rigged, this is an old idea, right? But it's not any more rigged right now than it was for a medieval peasant. It's not any more rigged right now than it was under Japanese feudalism. It's not any more rigged now than it was when you had noble tier classes. It's not any more rigged than it's ever been. So the case is, though, like, why is it that when you have the ability to exercise political will, you refuse to do it and just say the game is rigged? That's the insanity to me. Yeah.
Well, Rollo Tomasi makes this point. He says that women tend to date opportunistically and men tend to date idealistically. And I think that there's something to that, because these days I think that men don't really understand women as well because of all of this feminist influence and all of the Notebook movies, and they think that they're sort of some benevolent sex. They don't actually understand the game, if you will, right? So when you get into these relationships, oftentimes men will have no recourse if the courts and everything are stacked against them and stacked in the favor of women. So if you get into a relationship and you have all of your finances on the line, you have the rights to your children on the line and these sorts of things, and the woman decides that she doesn't want to back down from an argument, that she can leave and then you have no recourse, the game is really stacked against them. So I do agree with you that these are things that have to be actually contended with, because if a young guy hears that and he's trying to build something, he's trying to make something of his life, he's young, ambitious, still got lots of testosterone, why would he want to put all of his resources and potentially his children and all this misery on the line?
He wouldn't. And I would be the first to say there is offsets, though, and nobody ever talks about that. The idea, for instance, that if you're in an entrenched traditional church, Catholicism, Orthodoxy, things like this, for instance, and you get married inside of the church, it's not very easy for women to just get a divorce then, because they lose access to community. And that's what they need more than anything, access to community. And so there are offsets for this within ecclesiastical orders, which can do this. Under Protestantism, that doesn't exist. They just adhere to whatever the state model is. State says you're divorced, Protestant says you're divorced. State says you're married, Protestant says you're married. The churches don't say that, though. Traditional churches literally are avidly against that. They say, wait a second, I don't care what the state says. This is a sacramental marriage, and you don't get to just break it. That's not how it works. Or you get excommunicated. Well, excommunicate your ass, and you lose access then to community. Yeah, lose access to community. So there's an offset. Prenups are also offsets. There are things you can do to protect yourself that tend to work. But here's the thing. What most men do is they don't engage in any of those offsets. What they do instead is they just kind of follow, and this is the criticism that these red pillars have of the kind of like traditional right wingers who are online who make these arguments. They say just run right in. You know what I mean? Run right in head first and take the risk. It's like, well, you don't need to do that. But at the same time, you don't need to disengage and become so black-pilled that you can't mitigate risk. I mean, you mitigate risk in other aspects of life. You know what I mean? And while the game is rigged, it's not so rigged you can't beat it. You know what I mean? It's on hard mode, but it's not on extreme mode. We're not to extreme mode yet. We're just on hard, but not even at very hard. And it's like, look, yeah, the game is hard, but you can still beat the game. And the other thing you can do is you can utilize your advocacy systems to put the game back to a normal mode or even an easy mode, which would be even better. You know what I mean? We have political power and we should be using it. And there's the whole idea of checking out and just allowing other people to utilize political power and not you is one of the reasons we got in the mess we are right now, because Christians have refused to exercise political authority.